they call quality control. And quality control for them, and still today, is fixing production line errors when they come off the production line at the end. And it usually required a very, very large guy in Tennessee with a rubber mallet adjusting the car. Toyota has no one in quality control. The philosophy that Toyota has is quality is everyone's job. Quality is built into the process. And I think that's where we are with governance right now. All of those projects inspected the algorithmic outputs at the end of the production line instead of building governance in from the outset and ensuring that the job was done.
We're on the Hitchhiker's Guide to AI Governance podcast. Tell us a little about who you are and what is the change that you make in the world.
I work these days, I'm a IT project manager and systems architect is my main career. These days I work predominantly in the area of artificial intelligence. I got my first AI qualification in 1986 and built a few AI systems back then. In those days, we were mostly working with rules-based expert systems in languages like Prolog and Lisp. And I started out, did things then like airline optimization for TAA. Telstra, I did a expert system for fault diagnosis on Telstra's network. I did an expert system for an investment firm implementing a Modigliani-Miller Black-Scholes financial modeling algorithm and checking for arbitrage opportunities in the stock market. So I go back a little way in AI, and since then I've mostly worked in project management in one form or another, running very large programs of work. I have directly controlled about 30 projects worth about $3 billion, and in my portfolios over the years I've had hundreds and hundreds of projects reporting into me, long-term in IT.
So
What? Yep.
To bring us to now, what's the change that you're making in the world today?
I do research and writing with respect to AI governance, and I have a philosophy, if you like, which I call the Ford versus Toyota moment. So the Ford moment, so there was a exceptionally good book written in 1986 called The Machine That Changed the World. It was published by MIT in Boston, and it was a study of US car manufacturing versus Japanese car manufacturing. In the 80s, the Japanese were starting to disrupt what was happening in America. And at the time, and it's not a lot different now, but at the time, Ford Motor Company had 25% of its workforce in what they call quality control. And quality control for them, and still today, is fixing production line errors when they come off the production line at the end. And it usually required a very, very large guy in Tennessee with a rubber mallet adjusting the car. Toyota has no one in quality control. The philosophy that Toyota has is quality is everyone's job. Quality is built into the process. And I think that's where we are with governance right now. If we look at disasters like Robodebt in Australia, Horizon in the UK, the Dutch the Dutch childcare system, and I'm afraid the Australian aged care system is going to go this way as well. All of those projects inspected the algorithmic outputs at the end of the production line instead of building governance in from the outset and ensuring that the job was done properly in the first instance, so that checking wasn't required. So I think we are facing our Ford moment in AI governance. The volume of transaction going through algorithmic decisions through AI systems is beyond inspection. You can't inspect quality in, you can't check at the end of the production line. I'm trying to help with that. I write books, I run training courses, I consult, and I build software where the overriding foundation of those software products is that governance is built in from the outset.
So take me back to your early days. And one thing that was interesting about your background is that you've been working with effectively AI systems for 40 years. And a lot of people believe or would think that AI systems are relatively new. So, one of the questions I've had is, was Robodebt actually an AI system? And that's one of the things that people struggle with.
There are a couple of there are a couple of points you've raised in that. There are a few things, so I'll try and deal with them one at a time. AI has taken 70 years to be an overnight success. The Dartmouth conference in 1956, this is how when it goes back, coined the term artificial intelligence. And it was really a consequence of Alan Turing and his work prior to and then during World War II that established the foundation of what we would today call artificial intelligence. So we've been working on AI as a commercial product since 1956, a very good year. And there's been what they call the AI winters right through that period. And what is referred to in the academic literature as an AI winter was the point at which the hardware was unable to keep up with software innovations and progress stalled. As recently as the 90s, nobody working in AI research genuinely expected a retail consumer-facing AI product. Everybody thought it was a back office function that would appear in technology in different ways. And we saw it in commercial technologies with things like spell check, which were implementations of the early versions of artificial intelligence. The last 3 years, we've seen, of course, the consumer-facing ChatGPT-driven world of AI and a massive acceleration. And part of this is that the hardware is simply better now and able to do more. And there were some significant software breakthroughs that were able to exploit that. But yes, it's 70 years to be an overnight success is fair. That was the first question you asked. The second one, sorry.
Robodebt, was it defined as an AI system?
Yes, that's right. Look, it is not the owners and managers of Robodebt would not call it AI. However, the OECD definition and the Australian government formal definition of what constitutes AI basically revolves around algorithmic decision making. And that definition it draws into that net of what would constitute an AI system for the purposes of regulation, a lot of legacy mainframe applications. So where algorithmic decision making is the basis or a feature of one of those old legacy applications like Robodebt and the more recent aged care, they would generally fall under the regulatory umbrella of AI regulation, AI governance, under the Australian definition, under the OECD definition, under the European Union AI Act. So it's much broader than simply things that are designated as AI.
Well, that will catch a lot of people out because they may be working on systems that they themselves don't believe are AI, but the
Correct.
definition catches them. And the system might not be wholly AI. There might be an AI module within a vendor supplied commercially off the shelf product.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking back over all of those years that you've been working since 86 and to where we are today, tell us about the spark that ignited in you to write Garbage in, Gospel Out, and what motivated you to actually write a book on how to do AI properly.
A lot of the publications around AI governance have been driven by lawyers. There's a huge amount of legal interest in AI governance, and most of the organizations, committees, bodies that I have seen are drawn a lot from the influence of the legal profession. And they have a particular perspective. And it's a reasonable perspective, but it's one perspective. And the second group is computer scientists. Project managers have been left out of this conversation. The people that are implementing systems on a day-to-day basis, the person who is told, go away and build this, has been left out of these discussions. They don't know how to execute on these requirements, what it means to them in a very practical and meaningful way. Now, I come from the background of project management, informed, of course, by decades of experience in artificial intelligence, but it's mostly from project management and business solutions design. I was very heavily involved in business process reengineering, workflow modeling, robotic process automation for almost all of my career. And so I look at those from a different perspective. My perspective is, how do I get the work done? And that was what motivated me to write Garbage in, Gospel Out. Now, when I started writing that, the Digital Transformation Agency in Canberra published their 42 statements, initially just as a web readable document. They have since updated that. And I thought this was a very good work product, but it still didn't quite go far enough. It still didn't tell me, as somebody responsible for deploying systems, how would I go about it? what do I have to think about? What do I need to do? So I have tried to write a practical guide for the people who have to build and manage these systems.
Wow. So what feedback have you had on the book since it was published late last year?
Extremely positive. The enthusiasm for the message has been strong. I've had nothing but good reports. Nobody's picked up on the spelling errors yet. It's been quite good. Of all the books I've written, and Garbage in Gospel Out was book number 8 for me. This has been the most successful in terms of its adoption. You haven't asked about why the title. What does the title mean?
I was getting to that, but now that you've asked
Okay.
that, what does the title mean?
Bruce, as you know, because you've been around a while, we've had a common saying in IT of garbage in, garbage out. And what garbage in, garbage out generally means is you put crap into the IT system, you put crap into the computer, you get crap out. Now, what we've seen with some of these big systems is you put crap in, and what comes out is, oh, the computer is right, the computer is gospel. Now, I can quote this in terms of this has a material impact on people's lives. In robo-debt, you had this rubbish algorithm which impacted people's lives, and the department said, well, the computer said it was right, therefore it's right. In the UK Horizon project, 900, I think it was 790 or 900 people were charged with false accounting based on their shop figures in their post office sub-branches were different to what the computer was saying. And the assumption was the computer is right, when it wasn't. It really wasn't. But everybody said in the courts, the computer is right. The lawyers, the judges, the chief executive officer of the UK Post Office, the computer is right. Therefore, on that assumption, and that is the underlying assumption in that whole series of court cases that ran for nearly 20 years, was where the individual has a different answer to the computer, the individual is false. And the same thing happened in Dutch childcare system. And that became so significant, it brought down the government of Mark Rutte. The entire cabinet had to resign because they messed up so badly that they had to leave office. And again, it was, well, the computer said that you are not eligible, therefore you're not eligible. Now, what we've seen in the press in Australia in the last few weeks is people working in aged care have expressed this same problem, that the answer coming out of the aged care algorithm, they cannot modify it, they cannot adjust it. You know, they've said things as blatant as this person was graded as 1 when we think they should have been a 6, and therefore they're not getting any support. And we can't change that. Now, that is so contrary to the principles that Australia has adopted for artificial intelligence, where we say human in the loop. The computer must not be providing the final answer. That has to come from a human intervention. But what we're seeing, in fact, is garbage goes in and gospel comes out and nobody can challenge it.
Yeah, so that's the aged care integrated assessment tool that defines the amount of, or the level of support someone who requires aged care support so they can live at home. Now, if you're downgraded, as what is generally happening, these people are losing services, home care services, personal support services, social services, all range of things that potentially cause harm, Darryl. That's where I'm going with.
I am not trying to pass judgment on whether those people should be downgraded or not. What I'm saying is the computer is not following the principles set down by the Australian government, where it is a human review and the computer informs the human, doesn't take over the task. But what appears to be happening, if the newspaper reports and the interviews are correct, there is no opportunity for an informed professional to override the outcomes of the computer decision. And that was the problem with robo-debt. It was a problem with UK Horizon. It was a problem with the Dutch childcare system.
When you've deployed a new system, isn't someone disagreeing with an outcome, isn't that like a form of feedback? So if we enabled the assessors to override the outcome, we would then be able to see how many times the computer got it right and how many times the human said, no, that was incorrect. They need to be higher for these reasons.
Yeah.
It would help us tune the system, wouldn't it? Isn't that the intention of having a feedback loop?
In fact, and that's a leading question. Thank you, Bruce. As you know, in the DTA's 42 statements, that is some of the criteria. There are requirements in the implementation guide from the Digital Transformation Agency that humans assess the output and grade it and modify it accordingly. That doesn't appear to have happened in this instance.
And the only process they've got available to the consumer of these services is to ask for a review. Now, the government now has got 800 cases that are under human review.
Right. And now we're back to the Ford production line problem. And this is what I mean by the Ford problem. A review is fixing something that was broken but has come off the end of the production line.
Yeah. And they can have any colour they like as long as it's black, I guess. That's what the government's saying in a roundabout way, because they're saying that the computer's right and that the money that they're not getting, someone else is getting. So the pool is not changing. It's just being redistributed.
And this is the garbage in, gospel out. The computer is right. Well, what if it's not right? How do you challenge that? How do the professionals working in that department challenge it? Now, that's the problem that I have seen in the press with respect to the aged care. It's not that the recipients of aged care are complaining. And we're all familiar with consumer customers not being happy with the system. But this is professionals doing assessment in the department have complained about the computer system.
More to come, I think, on this one, Darryl. Let's just see
More to
how
come.
this plays out. It's interesting that they're not even following their own standards, because as of July,
Clearly not following their standards.
isn't the Department of Health, Aged Care and Disability required to implement these guidelines?
It's a central agency. It's required.
So interesting to see where this ends, and it's going to go a long way, I think. We'll hear more about it. So, what do you think in today's world is the most overhyped AI?
I think AGI is probably the most overhyped thing. Now, there's two phrases that are bandied around quite regularly. One is artificial general intelligence, and the other one is superintelligence. And I'm of the view that AGI, artificial general intelligence, is still some distance away. And even though Mark Andreessen of Andreessen Horowitz in Silicon Valley has pronounced last night our time that AGI had arrived, it's just not evenly distributed. I believe that he's confusing AGI and superintelligence. Superintelligence is basically a large language model on steroids, and I would say that all the evidence points to we're about to have a massive breakthrough in what Claude and ChatGPT can deliver. They're getting better all the time. They're getting better very quickly. I don't believe they're getting to AGI. And there are scientists and researchers who are trying to build AI to recognize the world that we live in a physical sense. And those, I believe, are required to achieve AGI. And this is Mira Murati, who was the chief technology officer of OpenAI and left to start her own firm, and Yann LeCun in France, who of course is a leading researcher, and he has received a few $1 billion to try and figure out AI in the real world. So I think AGI is a bit further away than we think. Superintelligent is a bit closer than we think, and the general AI tool is coming rapidly, and agentic AI is coming even faster.
So, thinking about the leaders that you've met with over the last 50 years in your IT career and what they might be thinking and wondering or speculating about AI, how does a leader today balance the benefits of AI, the productivity, the cost savings versus the risks of security, privacy bias, etc.? How should they think about shaping that balance for their organisation?
I think the rules and regulations are not bad. I was disappointed that Australia did not go to black letter law with respect to AI, and Singapore has failed to do that as well. And it's my experience over a lot of work that unless business leaders are forced to comply, they will find reasons not to. And this is not just with respect to, we've seen this in occupational health and safety, environmental protection laws, building regulations. All of these required changes to law. Otherwise, we'd still have 60-year-olds in coal mines. And so there's been a failure to act when it comes to putting these regulations into black letter law, and that would have forced compliance. I don't think business people and project managers and CIOs are opposed to it. It's just that it requires extra work and extra time and extra money. So if they don't have to do it, they will not, because they will go on the path of least resistance. So that's the problem I'm seeing in Australia right now. It's all gee whiz, we'd like you to do this, but you're not going to be punished if you don't.
That's the Ford model all over again, isn't it? They're not going to
It
worry
is.
about it until they have to, until it
Yes.
comes off the production line and it doesn't drive properly.
Yes. And we see this time and time again. The Banking Royal Commission came out with several hundred recommendations for change. About 2 have been implemented. The Robo-Debt Royal Commission and court case came out with hundreds of recommendations for what's been implemented. Organisations are not being forced to comply, and that's probably the biggest problem we are facing as a country right now. That will cause us major headaches. Businesses will lose customers through this, and we're seeing this happening already when your data is exposed, when private information is exposed. People walk and they change to organisations that will protect them.
They vote with their feet, I guess.
People vote with their feet.
Yeah. The interesting thing
But
about
they can't when it comes to government services. They have no alternative.
Yeah. The bit that's interesting about all the things you've spoken about is that by adopting the Ford model, the likelihood of change will be predicated on them becoming a cautionary tale. Like
Yes.
Qantas with its data breach, other
Yep. Optus.
with their data issues. Optus, for example, took a few data issues for them to change, didn't it?
Yes. And again, Joe Longo, the chairman of ASIC, has made it very clear that there are existing laws that can be brought against organisations, including government agencies, that do not comply. He doesn't feel that specific AI regulation is necessary for him to take action at ASIC, and they have taken action in certain cases. So there are things that can be done. For example, victims of data breaches. So companies that have been hacked and their data has been leaked have been taken to court and have been fined. In Australia, the extent of the application of these court cases has been to fine people and fine them quite a lot of money. Yeah, I'm talking hundreds of thousands up to millions of dollars. They've been fined aggressively. In America, it's also resulted in some people going to jail. Now, the reason that the victims of cyber events have been sued is that those organizations have made proclamations about we protect your data, or we do this and we do that, and we have this in place and we have that in place, when in fact they have not. And so their failure to enact the regulations has exposed them. The same thing will happen with AI. They've been told this is what you have to do, and their failure to do so will result in consequences. Now, the privacy principles are law in Australia, and that does encompass a lot of the AI obligations. And so breaches of privacy regulations could be catastrophic for a lot of organizations. Now, Bunnings, for example, had a court case about the use of facial recognition in their stores, and the courts have broadly given them approval to do that again. Where they failed wasn't that they were using facial recognition to stop thievery in the stores. It was that the average shopper wasn't informed of a number of things under the privacy regulations. They weren't informed that they were being filmed. They weren't informed how the data was being stored, how the data was being used, how long it would be held for. They weren't being informed who had access to that data. Was it being shared with third parties? Were those third parties obligated in any way to inform the end users? So they breached a lot of the standard obligations under Australia's privacy principles by not getting informed consent to film people in their stores. It wasn't that filming people was wrong. It was that they didn't follow the privacy principles in how they went about it. And it's those sort of things which will trip companies up. It's a little bit like how Al Capone didn't go to jail for being a criminal. He went to jail for being a tax avoider. You find there's something else that will trip organizations up.
So what would be your best advice to leaders out there, to our podcast listeners? What would be your advice to them about the new world, and what would you leave them with?
I would say follow the 42 statements of the Digital Transformation Agency. They're highly practical, highly relevant, and it will lead to best practice. You will have a small learning curve to understand what they are and what the consequences are. So that will increase cost on the first 1, 2, or 3 projects. But it will reduce cost overall. It will reduce cost in long-term management. It will reduce cost in customer and market disruption. follow the 42 principles. And I noticed you call this the Hitchhiker's Guide, and the number 42, which is the answer to life, the universe, and everything, as part of that amazing book. Follow the regulations that are suggested. So for government agencies, for federal government agencies, it's mandated compliance. For state government agencies, it's, well, here's best practice. For private sector organizations, this is best practice. You don't have to follow it. However, I would say it is best practice. It will save your organization time and pain if you learn what this means. And you don't want in your organization to have a Ford moment where you have 800 complaints against you. Those are a lot more expensive to deal with.
So, thinking over your career for 50 years, I guess, in the IT world, or even earlier, you started, might have been a youngster when you started dabbling.
17.
What sage advice would you give to your younger self? If you could talk to that small boy who was a teenager, what would be the advice you would give him?
Well, I used to lament that I wasn't a very good coder and I didn't spend enough time learning how to code. I invested my time and effort in architecture and business analysis. And I previously had considered that I had missed an opportunity in not committing to coding. I don't think that's true today. With AI now taking over the mechanical steps of coding, and it's quite good within obvious failings, and it's getting better. Coding isn't the roadblock anymore. Understanding business is the roadblock. Understanding how to improve business is the roadblock. So the real skill today is design and business. So what a few years ago would have been considered soft skills are now the hard advantage. So my advice to everybody is learn analysis, design, business process engineering, read Rumler, Gary Rumler, focus on business improvement rather than technology improvement, and learn Chinese.
So tell us a bit more about what else you're working on at the moment. What's the Vendex solution?
So we are building the governance fabric for agentic commerce. Agentic commerce is exploding around the world. McKinsey has forecast that by 2030, which sounds a long way off, but actually is only 3 years away, by 2030, $6 to $7 trillion will be conducted through agentic AI, where agents will perform the online procurement for you. Last year saw a 4,700% increase in agents going to websites rather than Google search going to websites. So it's quite extraordinary. Now, what's missing in that space right now, and the gap that we're trying to fill, is the governance arrangement. Was this agent authorized? Did the agent have effective limits over what they were allowed to do, and did they comply with those limits? At the moment, there's about $290 billion a year is lost to merchants on refunds, where the customer says, I didn't buy this. This is not what I ordered. And 75% of those are referred to as friendly refunds. So these are from customers who did have a relationship with you and wanted to buy from you. And when the product turns up, they're saying, I know I didn't agree to this. I want my money back. Merchants are only successful in 8 of those disputes because they cannot construct the chain of evidence around what was approved. The moves by Visa, MasterCard, and others to close that gap at the payments end do not address the buyer's intent, and that will not improve this problem. And those refunds are growing at about 43% a year with agentic commerce. So that's the gap that we're filling. What was the intent by the buyer? Did the agent act on the buyer's instructions, or did it purchase differently to what the buyer had intended? Wow. And was that influenced by some other mechanism?
Whole new world.
Whole new world.
Yeah. So how does someone get in touch with you?
LinkedIn, of course, is the easiest way. I'm on LinkedIn and across the website, Vendex.
VENDEEX?
Yes. Now, Vendee is the buyer. Vendor, of course, we all know vendor. That's the seller. Yeah. The opposite of vendor is Vendee.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Darryl. Look forward to having you again at a future podcast where we can talk about how Vendex is going And thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Yeah, got a bit of editing to do, but I think it was
Yeah.
fabulous. Thank you.